Well, welcome back for part 3 of the Penny Family History Slideshow. Once again, my name is David Penny. Before the family immigrated to Canada, Jim set off to Canada first, and then Jack followed him later. And Jim actually made 2 trips, and I'll show you in a timeline in a second. But this episode is going to have some very interesting, I think it's very lively because it has a bunch of letters. And I'll do some dramatic renditions of the letters back home from Jim, but mainly from Jack back home. And the Jack letters are particularly poignant because Jack is actually the son who died in World War I. And so we have the most letters from Jack. I guess his mom saved them. So we have a lot of letters from Jack, and you really get to know Jack and as a young man and making his way in Canada. For these trips, they both go home. Jim and Jack both go home prior to World War I in order to sign up for World War I. So we'll cover off that period when Jim makes his first trip until the boys come home for World War I. Before we start, as usual, go grab your scotch. You can put it on pause now. I'll wait. Oh, are you back? All right, great. Well, let's have a toast. Toast to the Penny family. The Penny family, the history of the Penny family, and the successful execution of the Penny Family History Slideshow. Cheers. Let's go. So we'll start with a timeline of that period. Recall, and the 2 brothers involved here were really Uncle Jim and Uncle Jack. So Jim, as you'll recall, was James Ross Penny, who was the first son, the one that was born out of wedlock 2 years before Jock and Ann married. And the second son was nicknamed Jack. And so that was John Clark Penny Jr., or the first son after Jock and Ann were married. So Jim actually goes to Canada twice. The first time when he was only 16 years old, he goes and he works as a teamster in Toronto. Which a teamster is someone who runs a set of horses, drawing a wagon that's carrying stuff. And he also works on a farm. And then he goes back home, and he appears to have been quite successful. And then he goes back again, and he encourages his brother to come along as well. He actually goes over to Buffalo. The 2 brothers do together. Jim gets a job there in a lumberyard and stays. Jack doesn't get a job, and he comes back, and then he joins. He starts working for a farm in Ontario. Jim goes out to Manitoba because there's no more money to be made there in Manitoba. And Jack kind of follows him out to Saskatchewan. Eventually, Jack comes back to Toronto, and they're both in Toronto briefly. We have a picture from that time. And then Jack gets a job as a teamster. Jim goes home first, and then Jack goes home very soon before World War I breaks out, or immediately after. We're not sure of the exact date he came home. And then both Jack and Jim and their younger brother, Alec, sign up for the war. And Jock is also called back into service and signs up for the war as well. So Jim set sail in May of 1906, reaching Toronto May 23rd of 1906. He was born in 1890, so he was only 16 years old at the time. I think he was going to search his fame and fortune. I don't think Scotland was it was very difficult to get ahead, I believe, in Scotland, especially if you were a farm laborer. That's maybe all you would ever be. And I think even their jobs were hard to come by at the time. So Jim went to kind of seek his fortune in the New World. He sailed on the ship RMS Corinthian, the Royal Majesty ship Corinthian. Corinthian was built by the Allen Line. It was launched in 1900, so only 6 years before. She initially made the maiden voyage from Liverpool to Quebec and to Montreal. In 1903, the Corinthian began serving the Glasgow to Canada route. So Glasgow is very close. It's in Scotland. It's very close to where the family lived in Aberdeenshire as well. They carried first, second, and third class passengers. I have no doubt Jim was third class, and that was the ship. He wrote a postcard home. We don't have many writings home from Jim. We have a few, but this was one of them. And it's just a scribble. There's nothing on the back of this postcard except the address, which was addressed to Mr. John Penny at the Mains of Naperna, Udny Station, Aberdeenshire, Scotland, which is where the family lived at the time. And he just scrawled around the edges of the postcard. My address is, I think, Mr. something. I can't quite make that out. Mr. P, Mr. J, care of Thompson, 145 Christie Street, Toronto, Ontario. So we know exactly where he lived in Toronto, Ontario. Have arrived all safe at that Toronto in this old tub. I guess he didn't like his trip too much. The journey took just a fortnight, 2 weeks. A fortnight is 2 weeks. The journey took just a fortnight from the time I left Glasgow till I got here. So hoping you're all in the best of health. And that was his first message. So once in Canada, Jim gets a job as a teamster with a company called Hendry Teamsters. In other words, he's wrangling a team of horses to haul things around. This is it's not a family photo. This is one I found on the internet of them building Casa Loma in Toronto, which was built at exactly this time. And in fact, we know that one of Jim's jobs was hauling cut stone from the harbor up to Spadina and Davenport to help build Casa Loma. So if you look at, it's lucky that I got this picture. You can see Casa Loma. You can see perhaps it was a Hendry Teamster there hauling some stone. So that was one of his first jobs. I guess he had some experience with horses from the old country. And so I imagine him in a picture like that. So this is a letter from Jim back to the family. We don't have all of the letter. It's you can see this is page number 5 that it starts at. But we don't have the rest of that letter. We only have these pages, the last 2 pages. I gather there were 4 before this. Unfortunately, we don't have them. And it's by this time, Jim, we reckon it's sometimes around 1910. And I'm sure there are many letters back and forth, but unfortunately lost. But he writes back around 1910, we reckon, and at this point he's working on a farm in Ontario, and he's writing back to his brother, to his 17-year-old brother Jack, and he's telling him about that there may be a job for him over in Ontario as well, so kind of encouraging him to come over. I love these old letters. They really get a sense of who these guys were, who Jim and later Jack were. So I'll try to do a dramatic reading of the letter for you. Let me know how that goes. The people around this district are mostly Englishmen. I mean, among the farm servants, there are very few Scotties. I know 2 altogether. One came out in the same boat as me, and the other one has been out a year or 2, but I'm not very well acquainted with them. Well, John, I know of a place out here for you next spring already. Our nearest neighbour, a Mr. Butcher, wants a man next spring from the old country. He would give you 8 months' work. The way I know is that I have got 2 or 3 rides in his buggy up to town with him, and honestly, he asked me one time that we were going up together if I know of any other chaps coming out next spring. I said I did not know of anyone, but a brother that might come out. You should get about 145 for 8 months. This would be a rare chance for you, but you need not build up on that. Rather, wait and see how I get on this winter. You know, I'm by the months and have signed an agreement for 4 months, and will get the winter work out here if I please the boss. But if I get the winter put in here, I'll stay no longer. I'll take a flit up to Manitoba or Sask. There is way better pay up there. Any man with a little experience can make 2.5 a day. It would not take long to make a little pile at that. Well, this is all at present, Jack. Hoping to hear from you soon. Yours sincerely, Jim Penny. P.S. Any nice girls about Gillenhull? They're all terribly stuck up here and won't look at a farm labourer. Well, I hope that wasn't too bad for a dramatic reading. I tried my best, tried to channel my best Scottish accent. I know it's not very good. I love that part at the end about any nice girls, how they're terribly stuck up here and won't look at a farm labourer. So soon after Jim wrote that letter, he returns home to Scotland, probably around 1910 or so. He appears to have prospered while in Canada, because you can see him here showing off his new suit of clothes, his new coat, his new hat, and most particularly his new car, which appears to be quite fancy for the day. So I don't know if his intent was to stay in Scotland at this point or to go back to Canada later. Not 100% sure, but as it turns out, he does go back to Canada. Jim has a uneasy relationship with the old country, as will emerge in future letters, that he seems to be stifled by the place. So it's possible that he intended to stay, but then got sick and tired. So Jim is now back in Canada, and his brother Jack follows him soon. And we don't know if they're on the same boat, but we don't think so. We think Jim went earlier and Jack went later, and they meet in Toronto. And initially, they both work as Teamsters for Henry Teamsters in Toronto. And you can see here on the top left his one of his immigration documents, the correct ship, the Scandinavian, the correct date in March 23rd, 1912. And you can see a little note as well that the shipping company sends back, I think, to the parents or to whoever you indicate it arrived safely on shore. So they meet. Jack is 19 years old and Jim is 22 by now. And as I say, they work in Teamsters in Toronto for a bit. But then they go up to Buffalo, New York to try for work, maybe better job. The Teamster job was tough. That's a picture of Buffalo at the time. Jim finds a job in a lumber yard, and he stays there living at 220 North Division Street, which is right downtown Buffalo. And I'll show you where that is on a map. As you can see, Buffalo is very, very close to Toronto, just across Lake Ontario. And you typically take a train around past Hamilton over to Buffalo. And that's that dot, that thing that's indicated there is a Division Street where Jim lived. That's the exact address. And you also get a good view of Niagara Falls as you're traveling this way and that. Jack, however, doesn't find a job in Buffalo, and after 5 days, he goes back home again. He goes back to Toronto, rather. And when he's in Union Station, he sees a train of immigrants from England coming in, and he joins them and proceeds to the auction where they auction themselves off as farm laborers. And Jack gets a job with a farmer up in Arelsey. Arelsey is, you can see it on the map there. It's very near Mono Mills. And there's a picture of that area, the rolling hillsides, really quite beautiful country. And there's the church at Arelsey that stood at that period. So he probably attended that church. The farm was the farm of a certain J.A. Summerhill. And he was the hired hand. It was just him and the farmer. And then there was the wife and a small child, and then a girl to help the wife and the child. And also the girl also helped with the farm chores as well. Relsey is halfway between Alliston and Orangeville, not much of a town itself. So here we have the first letter back from Jack to his mom and dad, Jock and Anne, in Scotland. He's age 19 here. He seems to be quite taken by the life of being out on his own, I guess, and working in the new world. And he describes a little bit about what happened in Buffalo and how he got to be where he was. I'll read this letter for you now. Belsley, June 23rd, 1912. Dear Father and Mother, I've been a long time in writing to you, but better late than never. Well, I guess you will be wondering how this letter came from Canada when you had a postcard from us in the States. Well, I will try to explain. Well, we quit the teaming and was not sorry, for we were nearly eaten alive with beasts at the place we had our board. Well, we went across to Buffalo, intending to get work there, but we went 5 days and did not get any. Well, on the last day it was, Jim got a job in the lumber yard. So I left him working there. Well, I came straight back to Toronto, and just as I came off the train, there was an immigrant train came in, so I thought I would like to try the farmers. So I engaged to a farmer about 50 miles north of Toronto at $25 a month with board and washing, and I'm getting on grand. I don't know how long I will be here, as I would not engage by the year till I seen what's like the place was, but I think I will, as it seems all right. There is just the farmer and wife and a servant girl and myself. Well, Father, the mistress was asking me the other day if I knew any girls that would like to come to Canada, because she was wanting one, as the one she has now is English, and she does not like her. So I told her you might find one for her. She says she would pay the passage if required, but she would have to pay her back. The one she has just now has $5 per month. Pretty small, ain't it? But she says she would give for a new one $7 a month. Well, Father, you can see if you can come on to one and find one all right. There's just one small baby. They would like a girl from 19 to 20 years of age. Well, you can try your best, and if you can't find one, it don't matter. I like the English girl all right. Well, I think this is nearly all now. I guess you have got settled down all right at your new place. Has Sandy got a farmer yet? You might tell him to write when he gets my address, and you might send Jim's address when you write if you have got it. He was staying at 220 North Division, Buffalo, when I left him, but he said he was going to get out as soon as it was so dear. So you might send it as soon as you get it, and as he does not know where I am. We were about 10 miles from the nearest railway station here. Well, I'll stop now, as it's nearly bedtime. My address is Bellesley, P.O., care of Mr. J.A. Somerville, Ontario, Canada. I am your son, J.P. P.S. Got a fine sight of Niagara Falls. Yeah, well, he tended to run on his sentences, no punctuation, and well is used to connect all sorts of sentences together. But I think you get the drift of it anyways, for sure. So he describes, and that's how we understand what the goings and comings of Jim and Jack is exactly from these letters. He refers to a certain person called Sandy looking for a farmer. We're not sure who that is, but it's possible that Sandy is the head man at the farm at the mains of Naperna. I think it's the farmer Smith, Sandy Smith, maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but they seem to be fairly close and on good terms with Sandy. And here's another letter from Jack soon after that previous one. That one was in June 23rd. This was August 4th. He's still 19 years of age. And he's writing back, and he's describing to his mom what his typical day is like. Dear Father and Mother, got the parcel all right, and the socks and the scrubber, but the scrubber was as badly dried up that I could hardly touched it. Well, Mother, you were asking what my work is, and I will try and explain as well as I can. In the morning we get up at 5, and the first thing I do is to feed the pigs, then takes in the horses and cleans them, then takes in the cows. Then we get our breakfast, which is always porridge and cold beef and potatoes, and lots of fruit and pie. Well, after breakfast we milk the cows, and that finishes the odd jobs for the morning. Well, just now we are busy harvesting. We have everything cut except for the oats, and they are hardly ripe yet. We have been hauling in for the last 5 days, and we have just one field of rye to take in now. That is the barley, wheat, and rye that is in. The boss forks and drives the wagon. I was a bit awkward for a start, building with a fork and using the slings. You know, they sling it all here. 4 slings full is a load, which is about 40 stacks, so there is not much forking to do on my part. The girl always drives the horse that works the fork. So you see, evening goes along all right. We were asleep in bed about 10 o'clock. That would be about 3 in the morning with your time. There is 5 hours of difference. Well, Father, you need not bother about a girl because this one is staying on again. She is a home girl, and she is not out of the home's care yet. The home lady was round a few weeks ago, and the mistress and her made it up between them to help the girl for another year. Well, Father, the boss and I went down to Alliston one day. That is the nearest town and station, which is 10 miles from here. And I had $17 on me, and after buying a suit of clothes, which cost me $12, and a pair of boots, which was $3.50, and got me a haircut for 25 cents, I came home with $7.20. You would wonder how that came out well. When I was paying my boots, I handed down a $5 bill and got back $6.40. You bet I thanked him and shoved them in my pocket. Well, that is nearly all I have to tell you. Now, you're asking what like a country it is. Well, it is a beautiful country as far as the eye can reach. You see lots of hills and bush and lots of nice orchards and a few farms. I guess, Mother, you don't see Relzy on the map. Well, if you see Alliston and Orangeville, it is about halfway between them. Relzy is only a P.O. Has Father shot any hares on Benchkis yet? How is the bike standing up? Well, this is all at present. Hoping you are well, as well as this leaves me first rate. I am, John. Write soon. P.S. Have you had any word from Jim yet, as I have yet none? I would like to know his address if you have got it. There we go. Just a slice of life from 1912 in Ontario. Meanwhile, back over with Jim, we know from Jack's next letter, which I'm about to read, that Jim returns from Buffalo and travels out west on April 5th, 1913. He goes to work on a farm near Souris, Manitoba. So I show you there on the map, and bottom right is a photograph of Souris at around that time. So you see it's quite a bit north, very close to Winnipeg. I don't know if Jim writes home less often than Jack, or if we just don't have those letters, but there is a surviving postcard from Jim from the time that he was working out in Souris, which is a postcard of nearby Winnipeg from 1913. The date of July 1912 is when that postcard was taken. And here's the next letter from Jack that we have. I don't know if he wrote any in between, but it seems like there was problems getting mail either to and or from Jack, as he describes in this letter here. But this one is dated April 20th, 1913. Dear Father and Mother, got your letter all right this time, and got Mother's letter that she wrote on 5th of March. Then the last one after that was about the first week of November, so there is about 4 months that I never got a letter from the old country at all, and I guess Alex was the first I did get. Well, Father, you said you sent on 2 bundles of books. Well, I got the first bundle all right, consisting Pete Union, Jack the Boy's Adventures, and Dick Turpin. That was the only bundle I got, and I never got the letter with the photo out of the papes, and I got a pair of summer socks that Mother sent, but that was long before Christmas, so I don't know where they can be going to. There must be some god-darned son of a gun getting the good of them anyway. Well, I guess we need not bother about them now, because I will soon be away from here now, and we will see if they don't come any better at the next place I go to. I am getting pretty tired of this place, and the sooner my time is up, the better. I've been working from 15 to 16 hours a day ever since I came about the place. I do not mind it much in the summertime, because it is a busy time, but then I thought there would be not so much to do in the winter time. There was not much difference, for we worked in the bush all day and did the chores in lamplight. But we had a very mild winter here this time, just like an old country winter. But there were some terrible high winds. There was a great windstorm, swept Ontario and parts of the States, doing great damage on the 21st day of March. There was barns blown down, fences wrecked, and windmills blown over, and ever so much more. Well, Father, I see by your sketch in the letter of your garden it must be a good big fella, and it must be a nice-looking one with a hedge all around it. but I guess I will maybe see it myself when I come back again to bonny Scotland. Well, I will need to stop now and get the chores fixed up, for there is no one about the place but myself today. So I hope you are all in good health, as this leaves me all right. I am Jack. I expect to leave for the west about the 15th of June. Jim went west on the 5th of this month for Souris, Manitoba, but I have not heard from him yet. Yeah, the winter seems to have gotten Jack down. He was expecting to be able to put his feet up a bit, but the farmer had him going at it, working in the bush, I guess, clearing bush away, and then the regular winter farm chores as well. Jack refers to his dad sending him a sketch of a new house and a garden with a hedge all around it. I think we have a photo of that house. So I think maybe this is the house. This is an old penny photograph. I think I showed it in a previous episode. But I'm only gathering that from the hedge, this really quite luscious hedge outside the house. And maybe this is the house that he's referring to. So Jack does decide to quit that farm, and he comes back to Toronto, I think on his way out west. And meanwhile, Jim has come back east to Toronto from the Winnipeg area, and they meet up in Toronto for a time. Not sure how long they spent in Toronto, if it was any length of time, but these photos survive from that time. That's Jim standing in the middle. As we look at it, on the left is Jack, and on the right is a friend of theirs. Notice that Jack is showing off both a winter coat and a fall coat, so pretty prosperous. And they have stogies as well in one of those photographs. So these were sent home to mom and dad as a sort of a postcard that they made in Toronto to demonstrate that they were doing pretty well. Now, Jim, I think from here he goes back, and meanwhile, Jack goes out west to Saskatchewan. And so very soon after Jack arrives out west, he sends a letter home to his mom. It indicates that he's working in Saskatchewan on the farm of J. Ross Girvin around July, August 1913. I'll read that to you. Dear Mother, just a few lines to let you know that I received your letter all right, and glad to hear from you again. Well, Mother, I see by your letter you must have had a pretty bad time of it with the fever, but I hope by the time you get this letter you will have got over it all. So, Jim is getting quite proud and grand, is he? Well, I would not think he would have gone that way. I got a letter from him a few days before I got yours, and I think by what he says he must be getting quite tired of the old country. Well, Mother, you was asking when I was coming home. Well, I just don't know myself yet. If I can get a job here all winter, I will stay another year yet. I have been sitting on the plough for over 4 weeks now, but we have got finished at last and started to the hay harvest. And I guess by the time we get that finished, it will be time for the wheat harvest. Well, Mother, I guess you'll be thinking I had a pretty nice job sitting on the plow for 6 weeks. But I can tell you it ain't so very nice. You get tired of that the same as everything else. I guess we could cut some show if we was coming over to the old country with a 6-horse team and a 2-furrow gang plow, and the 6 horses all going abreast at that and only 1 pair of lines to drive them with. I guess it would make them look some. Well, Mother, I guess I will stop now. Hoping you're all well and in good health, as this leaves me enjoying the same. I am Jack. Write soon. P.S. They have a pretty nice daughter here, but I do not know if I have much chance with her. But I was out walking with her today. Well, he seems quite impressed with the 6 horses, the 6 horses abreast, and what a sight they'd make in Scotland if they had a rig like that back home again in the old country. I was also taken by the farmer's daughter as well, so I wonder if anything ever came of that or not. So Jack doesn't last too long out west because he comes back before winter time, which is probably a good move. Comes back to Toronto, and he lives at 27 Camden Street, which is right down near Spadina and Richmond Avenue. And this letter was written Feb 9th, 1914. You can see that he's He's working back for the teaming job again for Hendry's Teamsters. So let's have a listen of this letter. Dear Father and Mother, sorry I've been so long in writing, but better late than never. Well, Father, I'm still hanging on to the teaming, but I'm going to quit by the 1st of spring, as I have not yet had a whole pay since I started. I've been laid off for a few days every fortnight, and it is a pretty bum job in the winter time anyways. We've been getting very changeable weather this winter. Some days it's raining, and the next day it is way down to 26 below zero. I can tell you it is pretty goddamn cold when it is down that. For one of the Hendry Teamsters got his fingers froze, and he had to get it off. I believe Jim would have known him, Eddie Wilson. Well, Father, is Jim working in Aberdeen, or what is he doing? You might tell him to give me a few lines now and again. And what is Sandy doing? I did not know there was anything wrong with his leg till I got Mother's letter, and she only said it was better, so I think you might tell Sandy to give me a few lines also. I guess I will stop now, hoping you are all well and in good health, as this leaves me the same. I am your son, Jack. P.S. Tell them all I was asking for them. Well, Jack is getting a little uncivilized this time. It was goddamned cold, whereas a few letters ago it was a god darn son of a gun who was getting his mail. So here's the next letter from Jack, relatively soon after that one, but though it's not dated, he goes back to Scotland soon after this. So this is that earlier letter was February, so this is could be anywhere from March to right up to August, I suppose. But he says that he was laid off from his job and he was trying to look for another one on the street railway, which is, I guess, the streetcars, which were newly put in at that time. Let's have a listen. Dear Father and Mother, just a few lines to let you know that I got your letter all right and was very sorry to hear that Father was sick. I guess you'll be thinking I am very careless for not answering your letter sooner, but I've been off work 3 weeks and I've been hunting around looking for a job. I got fired from the Hendrys for not cleaning my harness, so I went down and tried for motorman on the street railway, but I was too young. You would want to be 23 years of age for motorman. But then man told me if I liked to come back and apply for a conductor, he would see what he could do for me. So I did go back, and he said there was nothing doing just now, but call back now and again till there was an opening, that is, if I was not working at anything else. Well, if I don't get a job in a few weeks, I'll go west to the farm. Well, Father, I hope you got over the operation all right and feeling lively and kicking again, but I guess it will be some little time before you feel yourself again. So, Jim is working in your place just now. Well, you can tell Jim there is nothing doing out here just now. It has been a very bum winter, and I think it has been bum all over Canada, and the States too. Well, Father, we had quite a big shooting affair just at the back of where I live. A Russian fella shot his sweetheart, and then shot himself through the stomach. The girl was shot dead, but the fella is well on his way to recovery. I guess Jim would know where it was, right on Adelaide Street, opposite number 406, at the back of 27 Camden. I guess the fellow will get hanged when he gets better. Well, Father, I think this is all the news at present. You can tell Jim and Alec that they are just as well to stop where they are just now till things brighten up a little. Well, I will stop now, hoping you are all well and in good health, and this leaves me the same. I am Jack. P.S. Tell Missy and Granny the next time you write that I was asking for them. So at this point, they still don't seem too much aware of a world war about to happen in mere months, if not mere weeks. But he does tell them that Jim and Alec better stay put where they are because there's nothing going on in Canada right now. I guess it's a bit economically depressed there in Canada. Notice he references Missy and Granny at the bottom of this letter as well. Missy makes an appearance. Recall that Missy was the second child besides James Ross, i.e. Jim, in Anne Gavin Ross's mom and dad's household when Anne was there before she married Jock. That Alexander Ross and Anne McKay Ross. That there was this child listed as a granddaughter, Missy, and with James Ross listed as the grandson. So this would have been like an older sister to Jim and Jack, I guess. So that's just interesting that she comes up, and Granny must therefore refer to Granny Ross, I imagine. So soon after this letter, we think he returns home, either because he hear that war has broken out and he wants to get back to enlist, or just comes home because of lack of work there. Not entirely sure, but he did indicate that he was intending to go out west again in that letter, but he doesn't wind up going out west. He winds up going back to Scotland. So I guess we'll call that an episode, the episode of the trips to Canada prior to World War I and prior to the family as a whole immigrating to Canada. Oddly enough, Jim actually doesn't come back to Canada. He goes off to the Caribbean and marries a very lovely woman and stays there all throughout World War II, where he actually works as a guard in a prison camp there. He eventually makes his way back to Canada, I think in the 50s or 60s, to join up with the rest of the family, with Aunt Winnie in tow as well. But anyways, that'll do for this episode. Once again, as usual, grab your single malt and let's have a toast to the Penny family and all their adventures in Canada. Cheers.